Hey everybody, this is Alex. This is the Dresden Files podcast, episode 21, the Dresden Files cooperative card game. We have Eric here as a guest. He is part of Evil Hat Productions and the Kickstarter for said cooperative card game. Eric, can you say hi?
Hey, good to be here.
We got Jacob from 42 Entertainment back with us.
How's it going, guys? Good to be back.
We got Andreas, also known as Syntax Smurf, mod of /r/Dresden Files.
Hello.
And Justin, who should be doing something special right now, right, Justin?
Yep, I just clicked the button, and it's not doing anything.
So right now the total for this Kickstarter is $399,000 and $399,939.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all refreshing the page. This is very exciting podcast.
Yes, this makes for great radio.
I'm sure that Kickstarter does not update in real time.
It'll happen. It's broken.
There it is. We are over $400,000. Justin, thank you.
Hey!
There it goes. $400,008 for the cooperative card game. That's whole nother goal, isn't it? Right?
I am as happy as a little girl.
Eric, congratulations, sincerely.
Thank you very much.
This is an amazing accomplishment. But before we get to that, the Dresden Files podcast is part of the Broken Jars Entertainment Network, brokenjars.xyz. Check out some of our other stuff. Check us out on DresdenFilesPodcast.com for all the links, iTunes, YouTube, Twitter, and yeah, let's get started. We're gonna ask some questions of our of our guest, Eric. We're super excited to have you, and again, congratulations on this insane Kickstarter. Seriously.
It's very gratifying, I have to say.
All right, before we get into the nitty-gritty, we have to ask every new guest on the show, what is your favorite 3 books and your favorite character?
I think my favorite book now is Skin Game, the latest one. I didn't actually expect to like it that much when I first read the premise because I don't like the Ocean's 11 movies, or I don't like heist stories very much. But I ended up really getting into that novel without getting into details that I guess would be spoilers for.
Oh, this is
spoiler.
100% spoiler podcast.
Oh, there's tons of okay. Just the whole thing with Harry's daughter asking him if she would be his dad. That was awesome. That totally got to me. And aside from that one, I really liked Cold Days. I really liked the way that the story started to take a new shift after that one. And I liked Grave Peril a lot. Sometimes it's a little tough for me to sort out which is the book I like best as opposed to which is the scenario in my game I like best. That gets a little murky for me at times. So I named two books that aren't actually scenarios yet. I still have to turn those into scenarios for the game.
Well, so what's your favorite scenario in your game? Since you brought it up.
Oh, since I brought it, I think probably Grave Peril. That's probably why I'm naming Grave Peril as the third favorite novel. People usually just ask me what my one best I like is. I don't usually have to come up with a list of 3. But Grave Peril, it's a pretty tough one. I made it a little tougher than the previous 2 when I was designing the game, on the theory that it's a story where Harry doesn't entirely win by the end. It's one where he has wins and losses. Ever? Well, there's some, compared to the previous 2 books, he really comes out pretty much ahead. Good pretty much triumphs in the first 2 stories. And he, Good has some losses in Grave Peril. So I made that one a little more difficult.
Got it.
And favorite character?
Favorite character. I like Thomas. I follow his kind of story arc very closely. I'm also partial to Sonya because he's an atheist.
Oh, I love Sonya. He has one of the best lines in the whole series with that. So you tap dadas.
Yeah, yeah, yep. I think he just said you tapped that. I don't think he actually said.
I think he said you tap dadas. Presumably
Really?
it was fat, and then spelled with P, I think.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for your favorite books and favorite
Sure.
character. All right. Let's get into We're gonna do kind of a question and answer thing. We have some questions from fans, from
Sure.
previous hosts and guests of the show. But before we get started with that, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your position at Evil Hat, how you got to be there, what you do at Evil Hat, just a little bit of background?
So, I mean, I don't actually work for Evil Hat. I'm more like a freelancer who does game design for them. They initially brought me on, gave me a commission to kind of redesign a game called Zeppelin Attack, where I was essentially starting with a bunch of art that already existed for a different game they weren't going to do, and created a new game out of that art, a deck building game. Went on to do a different game for them called Don't Turn Your Back, which is based in the Don't Rest Your Head role-playing game, which is the creation of Fred Hicks, the owner of the company. And the Dresden Files game is going to be my third game for them.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain in as much detail as possible the Kickstarter, specific, the Dresden Files CCG Kickstarter? Like what were the stretch goals? How did it get started? Anything you can talk about,
Okay.
I guess, specifically.
Sure. So just to be clear, it's not a CCG. It's a cooperative card game.
Okay.
So it's not collectible.
Okay.
It's you don't have to buy like boosters and see if you get what you want, anything like that. So to start with how it got started. So at Gen Con 2014, I think it was, or maybe it was 2013. I was there with Fred and Chris Hanrahan and Sean Nittner, and Rob Donahue, so most of the top people at Evil Hat. And we were kind of basking in the success of Zeppelin Attack and some other projects. And they asked me to take a look at this Dresden Files possible card game somebody had worked on spec for them. And so I did an evaluation of it, and what I told them was I thought it was a pretty good game, but it wasn't a very good fit for the Dresden Files. It didn't have enough theme in it. And so I suggested that if they're going to do a Dresden Files project, that's really their most important license. They're probably best known. Well, they're best known for Fate and the Dresden Files role-playing game. Those two things, and the one is part of the other. So I said essentially, you should really go big or go home if you're going to do a Dresden Files board game, hobby game. And in fact, I suggested that doesn't necessarily have to be me that does it. I know some reasonably big names in the game industry, at least well enough to get them on the phone. I could get them working on it if they wanted somebody more famous to do it. And they said, no, we want you to do it. I was, oh, great. And then they said, and we want it to be a cooperative game, which initially caused me some cognitive dissonance because I hadn't created a cooperative game before. So for any of your listeners who may be Dresden Files fans and not necessarily gamers, a cooperative game is one where all the players compete as a team against the game itself. So I had a fairly long design process. I worked on this game for well over a year. put together the base set and the 3 expansions that are part of the current Kickstarter. In a given game that you play through one novel of the Dresden Files, with your choice of characters out of the selection of characters we've created. So the current material that I've created for the game goes all the way up through Turncoat. Let me see. And then, I'm sorry, I've lost the thread of the question a little bit. You then wanted me to move on and talk about the Kickstarter?
Yeah, in specifics, kind of like the stretch goals and what you get, and with each tier, stuff like that.
Okay, sure. So the basic thing that you get at the main pledge level is you get the base set of the game. The base set of the game is 5 novel decks and 5 character decks that include Harry, Karen, Michael, a Billion Georgia deck, and a Susan Rodriguez deck. And one of the stretch goals that's now, I think, everybody's getting, based on where we've gotten to in the stretches, is a pair of swap out half vampire cards for Susan, so that you can play her before and after her transformation there. Then there are 3 expansions that you could get individually, but if you go to the $69 tier, you're getting all 3 of them. Or you can just add on $10 to your pledge individually just to get the ones you want, I think. Fred is a better person to give you all the nitty-gritty about how everything in the Kickstarter works, since I'm only the humble game designer. None of that's in my control.
That's okay.
But the 3 expansions, each one gives you another 2 books and another 2 characters. And so lots of fan favorites in the characters in the expansion. So Thomas, Molly, Butters, Sonia, Anastasia Lucio, is that how you say her last name? They're all in those expansions. They have also reached the bonus tier where I believe everybody is getting the mouse deck along with that now, which I actually created during the Kickstarter because everybody blew through the stretch goals that I created way faster than I predicted they would. So we had to add a little new material during the Kickstarter, although I don't want to overdo that because I wouldn't want to rush through creating a bunch of sloppy material that wouldn't be good for the game just to enhance the Kickstarter. So I did the little bit that I felt like I could do a good job of in that time frame.
Dude, speaking of, you massively blew the minimum amount you needed to get, and you had to get some more stretch goals.
Yeah.
Who got Jim to put up a chapter for a stretch goal?
I'm assuming that was some. I don't actually know the process behind that. I'm a loose cannon. They don't want me talking to Jim directly, I don't think. I have a reputation for offending people just on a casual basis. No, I'm exaggerating somewhat. But no, I actually don't know the story behind that. It wouldn't surprise me if it was something he just volunteered because he's been very supportive. I don't know if you noticed that if you watch the video on the Kickstarter, the video is all done with narration by Harry. That's all taken. I took clips from the novels and kind of junk sculptured them into a script for the Kickstarter video, and Jim Butcher did the narration for that. So he's doing the voice of Harry himself.
Well, that's cool.
I didn't notice that. I'm not sure if I've even seen that video.
Yeah, you should watch it. It's his voice is exactly how I imagined Harry's as I was reading the books.
But for me, James Masters is Harry's voice because I've only listened to those audiobooks and I've listened to them a lot. But which
Sure.
one of them is it? Because I know there's a fair few of them. I saw some of the how to play video.
Oh, up at the very top of the Kickstarter page, the first video you see up at the top. That's it.
Okay, that one. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I've only seen the how to play video.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why I haven't seen it.
But in general, he's been very supportive. So he, for all I know, he may have just volunteered that chapter for us.
So I have a couple of questions for you. One I'm going to steal from some of the material that one of our other hosts provided. Do you actually use some kind of Dresden Files Bible for getting the material, or do you only use the books directly for what you were doing in your research?
I pretty much just use the books. Once in a while, if there's some little concrete detail I'm looking for, I might look for it on like the Dresden Wiki or something. But mostly, I've read all those books probably about 5 times now in a very patchy sort of fashion as I'm writing the game, as I'm theming the components of the game. And then after I was all done, Fred actually brought in a theme team of Dresden Files fans to go over my theming and looking for places where they felt like they could punch up the theming.
Yeah, I was about to ask, do you get fact checked so that it's in universe correct or anything, but like so that like everything is within theme and there's not something that's out of like how it's in the books? Maybe you remember a character from earlier and then the character has significantly changed. Winter Knight Harry, for example, just that's a big thing. But you know, and is there someone who just checks to make sure that what you've put in the game is correct with the books?
Well, Fred probably has checked that. Although the way I go about it, it's very unlikely that we would have that kind of a problem because usually, if I'm working on a book deck, I'm probably going to sit down and reread that book, before I start the book deck itself. And I'm not, I may have mentioned this before. Because, excuse me, sorry, my asthma is giving me trouble today. Just to show you, I really am I'm establishing my geek cred with my asthma here. Let me get my inhaler. So the way I go about it, it's very unlikely that I would screw something up that way where I would stick in a character who's actually from a different book or doesn't belong or anything like that. I think probably Fred goes through and looks to see if we've kind of minimalized actual spoilers in the game. It's impossible to completely remove all spoilers for the benefit of somebody who hasn't read the book yet. But we can try to prevent sort of the worst of spoilers. So, if there's a mystery as to who somebody is that gets revealed at the end of the book, we'll have a card that's framed around the mystery, but we wouldn't frame it around the answer to the question. We sort of wouldn't provide that. Because we recognize that there's a variety of constituencies for this game. There's people who are gamers who don't necessarily know the Dresden Files. There's people who play role-playing games but don't necessarily play board games yet. There's people who just are fans of the novels and aren't gamers at all. And we really tried to design this game to be good for all of those constituencies. It's a serious enough game that it's a good fit with people who are serious hobby gamers. It's got an easy enough learning curve that it's a perfectly good entry-level game for people who haven't gamed before but love the Dresden Files.
Where do you where have you expected most of the segment of people to come from? Fans of the Dresden Files or more gamers? Like who do you think will mostly buy the game?
Well, there's a lot of overlap between those two groups. So probably the most core constituency is gamers who are also Dresden Files fans. But I think so far on the Kickstarter, I have a hunch that it's a bigger chunk of Dresden Files fans just based on the chatter that we're getting on the Kickstarter. Just looking at it's been a very active one in terms of the comments going back and forth. Fred and I have really been having very active dialogue with the people who are on this Kickstarter. They're very excited about it. And it's clear they're very excited about it because they're Dresden Files fans, regardless of whether or not they're also gamers. Clearly, some of them are.
Okay.
So I had another question, sort of a and B, about the scope of the game. You said that so far the books go up through Turncoat, which is a fantastic place to stop in a lot of ways. That's one of my favorites. Mm-hmm. But was that on purpose because of changes, and do you guys plan on doing a second Kickstarter or a future expansion where you round out the remaining books?
Yes, we will. In fact, probably that's not far off. I don't know for sure whether it will be Kickstarted or not because that's not my department, but I have been asked to get to work on that, even though it's not going to be a part of the current Kickstarter. It's going to be a while. It took me, well over a year to design this game, so it's going to take me a little while to design the additional content. But I think probably as long as Jim keeps providing books and people keep wanting to buy the game, we'll keep current with it. There's with the forthcoming novel, that's 5 books that we haven't done. So, once we've done that material, which would, is what I'll probably work on next, then it's probably going to be a while before we can do a new installment. Because it'll just take a while for the new stories to get written.
Do you know if a little unrelated to the game itself, but I'm really curious about, since you know people at Evil Hat, and I do a lot of pen and paper gaming, if there's any plans for an expansion to the pen and paper side of their Dresden Files.
You mean the Dresden Files role-playing game?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know they have some stuff forthcoming. I'm not much of a role player, so to answer that question. But I believe Dresden Accelerated is still in the works.
That was supposed to be easier to jump into RPG kind of experience or something. It was a faster fate system, something like that. I read.
Right. The Fate Accelerated system is a somewhat more streamlined version of the game engine than the Fate Core system, both of which are updated versions of the role-playing engine that underlay the original Dresden Files role-playing game. I'm talking about that like I'm some expert on it. I'm not. I'm pretty confident that I know that to be true.
Okay.
If you don't mind, being someone who really doesn't know a whole lot about game design, why don't you walk us through maybe a high level, the last year of your life, what it's like to take a game from concept to getting it out the door like you seem to have it.
Sorry, Jacob is saying he's someone who doesn't know a lot about game design.
Right, that's what I did I say that wrong?
I'm just clarifying that.
It could have sounded like you said, so Eric, since you don't know a lot about game design, could you tell me?
That's my bad.
They really, they got me off the street. They gave me $5. They said, pretend to be this guy, Eric Vogel. There's a bottle of Thunderbird in it for you. So, sure, I'll try to walk you through that. So, essentially, the way it worked in this case is, I got the commission I'm told, okay, you're designing this game with a world you're enthusiastic about. That's great. We want you to design this type of game you've never done before. That's a little less great. So I spend a couple of months really kind of flailing around, trying to study cooperative games a little more. The most famous kind of cooperative games, things like Pandemic, Sentinels of the Multiverse, things like that. And then my game design process usually starts out the same, especially when it's a commission. I spend some time fiddling around with ideas that I reject because they're not workable or they're too derivative, something like that. And then eventually the idea for a core mechanic clicks, an idea for the basic thing that the players are going to be doing in the game. That gives it the seed of originality, not so much in the story and the theming of it, but in the actual action, what the players do. And so for me on this game, that was the action point system. The players who are working together as a team all share one pool of action points, and some turns they're spending action points, and other turns they're generating action points for the team. So that basic idea is what let the game then start to gel. So after that, it's a lot of me working on it, trying it out on people, seeing what's missing. A big part of where the inspiration came from in this game is actually I took a look at the Fate accelerated rules system. And of course, role-playing mechanics are completely different, or largely different from board game mechanics. But I took constructs from the rules of that role-playing game, and I found ways to represent those in board game mechanics. So in addition to trying to make this game everything Dresden, I was sort of trying to make it everything Fate and everything Evil Hat as well. Again, just trying to appeal to kind of all of the potential audiences for this game, and I knew that the people who love the role-playing game are a big chunk of that audience. So with that done, I then bring it back to show it to Fred. Fred and I have a Skype meeting where he's trying the game out, and he greenlights it. So he greenlights it with a big laundry list of stuff he wants. And it's specifically yes, I want a bunch more characters, and I want all these books, and I want a pony, and I want all these things in the game. And he got most of what he asked for. We had some kind of tug of war. It's like, I want to go up to this many characters. That's going to be hard. How about this many? Characters. It goes up to this many players. Well, it ended up being a 1 to 5 player game when we were all done. So then it was so I had the basic pattern of what the game was going to be down. I had to then go through and create the additional characters and the additional books. So most cooperative games are sort of a logistics puzzle at their core. The players have to kind of figure out an optimal order in which to tackle the challenges and spend the resources most efficiently in order to win. And so it was in the features of the logistical puzzle that I was trying to represent the plot points of the novel in the game in card form. So I'm trying to think of a good example of that. So sorry, I'm blanking for a moment on the name of the novel in which Harry duels Count Ortega.
It's Death Masks.
That's Death Mask. Thank you, Death Mask. So when I'm doing the Death Mask deck, and I've got this duel with Count Ortega, which Count Ortega escapes from, I thought, well, how do I want to represent that on an enemy card? And so I turned Count Ortega into a foe who had to be taken out by a player all in one shot, or they don't get them.
That's interesting.
As opposed to what the characters usually do, which is they can kind of ding an enemy a little bit at a time and wear them down. So that's just an example of kind of how you create what I'd call theme mechanic relationship. You can create a game totally independent of the content and then just slap names on the cards, but that's not the best way to capture the feel of what you're doing. So another example in terms of a character card, Harry has a blue beetle card. The blue beetle card has a really random, unreliable range. That's how.
That's awesome.
The character talent powers. Michael's talent works in a particular way that no other character's talent does, where it has to be primed, except for Molly's. And we came and had Molly's talent work the same way. And so that's a nice kind of subtle way of indicating a relation, their relationship in their kind of similarity of mechanics. So then I had to, having designed the system and really having only kind of designed it with like creating the first 3 books and 4 of the characters, Fred then said, understandably from a marketing standpoint, that he wanted a whole bunch more. I went and created most of what he wanted. That took several months. And then there was just a really, really long process of play testing this game. With all those characters and all of those book decks, that's an incredible number of combinations you have to test and make sure that there are no problematic interactions between any of the character powers. Or there isn't a particular book where one character just makes you win it super easily. It's that kind of thing.
So when you're testing, do you go through, do you force certain combinations? Do you actually go through every combination, or do you see how people play it and then maybe shift things?
It's a little both. I do. There were so many combinations. I mean, if I play tested the game exhaustively, it would have literally been thousands of play tests, which isn't really humanly possible, even for a short game. So what I had to do was create this series of very carefully planned experiments where it's like, okay, we're going to. I sort of defined Stormfront as being my litmus test book. So all the characters have to be tested on Stormfront, and I have to make sure that with Stormfront, every possible combination of players is tested, every possible draws out of their hand is tested. And then I have to make sure that with the remainder of the books, that every character has been tested in them, but not necessarily every single combination of characters on each book. So I make sure each book gets tested with Thomas, and each book gets tested with Molly. But not every single book always gets tested with Molly and Thomas together, just because mathematically there was a limit to that. But even so, it was hundreds of playtests just to do that, and I had to. Normally, I'm not this formal about it, but I had to really kind of plan out a fixed series of experiments in an order I would do to establish that the game had the balance that I wanted it to have. And so I had friends over for all-day play sessions. Thank goodness that the game is only a half hour long to play, or sometimes 20 minutes if you know what you're doing, because I would feed them. We would play literally all day into the evening, and they would play 30 games in a day. And that's the only way I was able to get through all of this play testing. It's also you have to playtest more when you're designing a cooperative game, because in a competitive game, if you play one game, you see who won by how much. You've got a data point about how balanced the game is. But in a cooperative game, you're shooting for a particular kind of win ratio. Matt Leacock, who's kind of the most famous cooperative designer, the guy who designed Pandemic, says you want the players to lose something between 2/3 and 3/4 of the time for the game to be challenging. Well, if you want them to lose 3/4 of the time, that means you have to do 4 playtests just to get one data point about how close the game is to what you want. So that was like it was probably 6 months of testing, very long playtesting process.
So just to jump in real quick, I wanted to say
Sure.
on behalf of the fans, thank you for doing as much research and not just designing some cards and slapping some names on it. We're used to seeing what Hollywood's doing with some of our franchises, so
Oh yeah.
so we appreciate not
Poor
going
Godzilla. Poor Godzilla.
not going the sci-fi route and writing the script the night before you play it or something. But, to piggyback on the balance question, though, how much do you dig into statistical analysis and that sort of thing, or like how balanced do you try and make the characters, or is that less of a concern because it's cooperative?
No, you need to make them balanced because Fred was pretty insistent from the outset, even though that created some headaches from me, that players should be able to play each novel with whichever characters they wanted to play it in. So you can put Thomas in Full Moon if you want, even though he didn't appear in the novel. The only limitation is that Harry has to be in every game, which seems reasonable. It's his franchise. He ought to be in there. But what that means is I have to, even though the players are quite different from one another, they have very different abilities, I have to make sure that they're pretty close to mathematically equivalent in terms of their overall ability. Now, for some of them, it's different kinds of ability. For some of them, it's attacking ability, and some of them, it's investigative ability. But none of them can really be. None of them are exactly weaker than each other in an overall sense.
It makes sense, because if you want to play Susan or you want to play Bill and Georgia from a flavor perspective, but they are significantly underpowered compared to Harry or Michael, it's if you feel gimp when you pick them compared to the rest of your play group, so they have to be pretty close in terms of balance. How worried are you about power creep as well when you're making expansions, that some of your new characters or get stronger and it's going to outshine some of the older ones, or you think you're going to be able to get enough playtesting in so that won't happen when you make new books?
I'm pretty determined that it won't happen. You have to, in a sense that involves a little bit of fudging, but not much. So, when we get to the next expansion, it's pretty clear there will need to be a Winter Knight Harry in that expansion to replace the Harry from the previous game. And he'll have to have some properties in common with the old Harry mechanically. And logic says, oh, well, Winter Knight Harry is just more powerful than old Harry. He's got to be more powerful. But if I just straightforwardly did that, he wouldn't be backwards compatible with the rest of the game. And fans are going to be able to go, as little sense as it makes in terms of the storyline, they're going to want to be able to go back and play Winter Knight Harry in Stormfront and see how he does. And it's not going to be fun if that just means he massacres Stormfront with little effort. So
it'd be a little fun.
It would be
exactly once.
It's fun the way eating a whole gallon of Haagen-Dazs is fun. Yes, it's fun when you do it, but it's not going to be fun later.
What are you talking about? It's fun now. It's fun later. It's always fun to eat a whole bunch of Haagen-Dazs.
I'm in some ways I'm a little parentified as the game designer. The fans say, "Ooh, it'd be great if he could do this." You think that now, but that would not be good for you. You will not develop character if you do that.
Can you imagine Winter Knight Harry facing off against Cells?
Yeah.
His first enemy, the Shadow Man, just see Winter Knight Harry now be like, dude, you're not even on my radar. Just get out of here. Get out of here, you.
Yeah. I think you could pretty much just infrigio Kalshazak and be done with him at this point. But at the same time, if you think about, since spoilers are all fair game here, if you think about the way the Winter Mantle works, it seems to come with a new series of disadvantages as well. He's vulnerable to iron now. It's clear that he can really overtax himself using the Winter Mantle and then crash and be badly injured. Excuse me just one second. I'm going to make sure that phone doesn't keep ringing and driving everybody nuts.
Oh, no problem.
No problem.
Man, I don't know about you guys. Oh, go ahead.
No, we're just waiting. I'm just still taking
Sorry.
this Richter cells.
Sorry about that. So the powered up characters are in the future game are going to be different more than they're really going to be objectively better in that sense of the game. They'll hopefully be cool and fun in new ways, but they'll probably be a discrete combination of new powers and new weaknesses. Excuse me. But there's going to be, when we do that expansion, I think it's fair to say there's going to be a powered-up Harry, a powered-up Molly, and a powered-up Butters as part of it.
Yeah, you were talking about how even though Harry's growing stronger, he's also getting more weaknesses. I think actually Jim does a really good job of keeping the power creep in the books in check. With even though Harry's growing, and it's not even so much that Harry's growing in strength, as he's just getting better at using his powers, and then he got a Winter Mantle on top of that. But other than that, it's mostly been learning to use the powers he has over the books.
Right.
I think he's been really good about managing. Because I saw a post actually the other day about some people thought it was very. He's almost like Dragon Ball-y, where he just keeps getting stronger, which I don't think is true at all.
Well, and yeah, I know. I think that's true. He's certainly not Dragon Ball-y that way, in which it's always here's a new level of strength. Oh, but a new level of enemy. I mean, there's a little of that in the novels, but I don't think it's out of control. And there's also the fact in terms of how we construct the decks. As I was looking at feedback on the Kickstarter, I was looking at basically all the fan requests for, we'd like a deck for this and a deck for that. There are some characters that I don't think we would ever consider as decks because it's so clear that they're on a different power plane than the characters who are in the game. There's any way you slice it, it would not make sense to have a Queen Mab deck in the game, or I'd have to create some really tortured logic about why she was under some powerful restriction and can't really just do her thing, because it's clear that Mab should be over the top both with regard to investigative and attack ability. With somebody like Karen, it's clear that she doesn't have the same attack power that Harry has, at least not by the later books, but she has other abilities that compensate for that and keep her on the team and in the game. So that's part of the logic too. Sometimes there's a little push-pull about who should or shouldn't be a character in the game. Right now, Fred would really like Mortimer to be a character deck in the game, and I'm a little dubious about Mortimer as a character deck in the game.
I love Mortimer as a character.
That would be a lot
really
of fun,
cool.
but there's not a lot of, not a lot to draw on from that.
He is more powerful than you would think. He's a major coward, but he has more powers than he gives himself credit for. At least I feel like in Ghost Story you really learned that he's a lot more powerful than you thought.
That's true, but he's also, in my mind, he's not quite a hero. That's part of it too. That's not his role in the narrative. Maybe in Ghost Story, but most of the time,
he's very upfront about the fact that he's not a hero. He's like, no, I'm a coward. Yeah. I'm good with just hiding. It's fine with me.
Well, and he's also more of in some ways, he's more of a plot device than a character. A lot of the time, he's a character who advances the exposition more than he does the stuff in the story.
I'm kind of hoping with the growth we've seen him at that he will, over the course of the next 5 or 6 novels, we'll see a little bit more of him, and maybe he'll grow into a genuine hero at some point. Kind of like how Butters did. That would be cool, because I actually like Mortimer as a character. I think he's neat.
Right. One of the things, not that I've actually played the fate system, but the way that I understand it with fate points and that sort of thing is it helps enforce the difference between like monsters, NPCs, and the regular player characters. And so, it would probably be pretty easy to use that as an argument on why Mab wouldn't be, a player character, other than just the powers, the fact that she's not free will, she's a force of nature. She
Yeah.
is ice. She is
It's true.
darkness, so.
Although she also apparently likes to go shopping, so there's that.
Right.
Which is an argument for her being a character. The other piece is that I think, for my part, some characters I feel like, I don't know quite which way they're going to go between good and evil. And of course, I can't predict what Jim's going to do with the novels. Somebody who I've already created as a character deck, as a hero, could end up being the antagonist in a future novel. That could easily happen. But I try to steer clear of that if I can. So there were some people who want a Marcone deck, and I don't think I would do a Marcone deck unless the stories really clearly took a turn where he was moving substantially more in the direction of being one of the good guys. And even then, you'll be able to go back into, I wouldn't want a situation in which somebody could take a character deck and go back to an earlier book and have the character defeat himself in the novel. I wouldn't want a situation where I might end up saying, "Ooh, I had that person as a character deck, and now I need them to be a foe in this game." That would be awkward.
You'll get that joy when Mirror Mirror comes out and you start working on that deck.
Yeah. So I'm curious. Did you get any advanced knowledge from Jim, and if not,
No.
did you find that? So I guess you found that kind of frustrating.
No. I mean, it's just what I'm working with. I try to be a little bit careful about some of those things. In some ways, it's really that process of, say, thinking twice about making Marcone into a character deck, even if it would be popular with a lot of the fans. It's, to me, me just sort of making the effort to stay true to the spirit of the source material as I see it. And the source material is that it's not clear which way the wind is going to blow with Marcone yet, and so I would reserve that as a possibility for when I do see which way the wind blows. Just be clear, I've never met Jim Butcher or had any communication with him, so...
Got it. All right. I'm going to ask a question. I hope it doesn't put you on the spot, or if you want to decline to answer.
Okay.
So the Kickstarter is now well over $400,000 with well over 6,000 backers. Do you, as probably the primary game designer, feel pressure towards satisfying the backers and the people who are going to play the game? Are you nervous?
No, I mean, I've done I've done my part. You got to have faith in your own work. And fortunately, excuse me, I say I feel fine. My asthma says otherwise. Fortunately, kind of the early returns are good in that regard, in that a lot of people on the Kickstarter have been printing out the print-and-play version of the game and trying it. And so far, it really is mostly very positive feedback about the game. It seems to be doing what I hoped it would do for the different groups of backers in terms of being a good entry-level game for people who mostly just know the books, being a good game for gamers who are serious about gaming as a hobby. Seems to be pleasing everybody, so that's great. Realistically, out of that $400,000, it's really Jim Butcher's work that's driving that. It's the largest share of that is people who are backing this because they love the Dresden Files, love the book series. There's a percentage of that of people who are backing it because they love and have a lot of faith in Evil Hat as a game manufacturer. And it's a relatively small slice of that who are people who are backing it because they know me already. But now that people are playing the game and there's going to be some buzz about the game, and particularly with regard to how the game does after the Kickstarter is done, just in general sales, then that's going to be a little more where we see kind of my contribution, where people are backing it because of the game it actually is.
Cool.
I hope that answered your question.
Definitely, and it comes from the most positive place. Like, after hearing you talk about the game, I'm like 1,000 times more interested to play it, and I'm personally really glad that I backed it about a month ago.
I am too. One of you backed it just today.
I haven't backed it yet because I can't find anywhere where it will tell me how much it'll cost to get it shipped to Europe, and I'm just like, I don't want to get slapped with like $40 or $30 or something of shipping fees.
Sure. And I'm not sure. I'm gonna see if I can. That is probably hidden in an update somewhere, whatever the last update was, where Fred clarified the current status of overseas shipping. And I'm sorry, I just don't have that number on the top of my head.
Let's see. Let me just try and search for Europe on the site. In Europe, as well as we'll have.
You can probably ship it to me.
$20 to get it shipped. Yeah, $20.
Well, and is that $20 with the $10 discount, or is that $20?
Formerly $30 before stretch discount shipping.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, $20.
So Eric, I was just going to say, in tune with your comment there, like, I'm definitely one of those people who I've been looking at backing it for a while. Today just happened to be the day, and it was fortuitous that it was, right? But,
right. Made for great theater.
Right. So just kind of talking about that in building confidence with the Kickstarter, like, the first thing that draws your attention as a Dresden Files fan is the Dresden Files name. But certainly if it had been Jacob's Kickstarter, I would have been a little bit more dubious. But the fact that Evil Hat is around and they have a reputation, helped be like, all right, because we discussed this before the show, like, Kickstarters, there are even Kickstarters in the news this week that aren't delivering. And we don't have that concern with Evil Hat. We know they've been around, they're going to be around. It's fantastic to see something like that come, and most of us are happy to buy it just because it's Dresden Files, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I think probably a lot of people go into the Kickstarter and later will go into the store in the spirit of, well, it's the Dresden Files, I've got to at least give it a try. And then hopefully they like what they get. I think we've created a game that will be rewarding enough for Dresden Files fans in terms of the amount of thematic Easter eggs they get out of the game. I think they will have the feel of, living through the book and that kind of feel you want to have when something is related to source material you really like. And I've certainly heard from, lots of Dresden Files fans who say, "Ooh, you better do this right. You better you better do a good job of this."
Well, nerds are jerks. What can we say?
Jerks.
Actually, the Dresden Files fans have actually been pretty nice, especially if you compare them to just the grognards, the hardcore gamers. They're usually a little less nice.
I mean, I come from a gaming background, both with Magic and stuff, and people can be really, really ruthless, where it's just like, what were they thinking? How did they not see this? It's just so unbalanced, and all the good things just get ignored because they focus on this one little bad thing. Just,
I have had people who will wait in line at a convention to tell me the thing they don't like about my game that they like. So they like my game, they want to wait in line to talk to me, but the only thing they want to say is the one thing that they don't like. And I think for a lot of people, that's the way they think. Oh, I'm going to seem learned if I do that. I don't know. I'm going to seem like I'm paying attention. They'll respect that.
Stood in line for 2 hours just to tell you, love your game, but this shit sucks.
Yeah, it's like, you know what I respect? Compliments. I like compliments. Let's have those.
Speaking of conventions, are you guys going to be bringing this to any conventions? What conventions have you visited in the past?
Sure. We had this at the Association trade show, Gamma, out in Las Vegas. And Fred has been demoing it some. We was just demoing it down in Texas. He demos it out in Maryland, where he is. I'm certainly around to demo it here in the Bay Area. I was just demoing it in France at a game designers thing I was at. We're going to be at Origins, the Origins game convention coming up this year. So I'll be there, so will Fred, so we'll both be demoing it there. Not really 100% sure beyond that, if there are more shows. There are going to be some Evil Hat people at Gen Con, but I don't think Fred or I are going to be at Gen Con.
There's Kineticon in July. It's a nice alternative to San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah, Evil Hat doesn't have. They're a small publisher, so they don't have as much infrastructure to set up booths at conventions. And so I'm a little wary of just going to this and that convention if it's not clearly set up that I've kind of got, a space to be demoing and someone to sell the game. And of course, the game's not for sale yet. I was demoing a very, very early of this version of this game way back at ZapCon a while ago, because ZapCon actually was the first convention that said to me, "Oh, we'll pay your way. We'll give you, we'll get you a hotel. We'll give you mileage, all of that." I was like, "Okay, sure, I'll come down to it." But of course, I'm, I'm a busy professional aside from game design, so I can't always come out to all the conventions. I have to kind of budget for the year my time away from work and all of that.
I think George R.R. Martin could learn from you.
I don't think I've got anything to teach George. I think he's.
You would teach him about time management, maybe. Maybe.
Maybe. I mean, it's like people say he's lazy. I think he'd say he's done.
I don't think he's lazy from what I've seen. He seems very. He goes to a lot of conventions and stuff, and I think that just eats into his time.
That could be. And, who knows what that level of success does to your creativity, too. It's got to mess with your head in some fashion.
Yeah, I don't know. I just watched the TV show anyway, and they're ahead of the books now, from what I understand. So. Yeah. It's all good.
So I have a personal question for you then. I mean, you're a game designer, so do you have a favorite game, and do you have a favorite one of your games that you prefer to play?
My excuse me. Pardon me a second. My favorite one of my own games is usually just whichever one I've just finished. So in that sense, it probably is the Dresden Files at the moment. My favorite game, personally, I'm probably my favorite game is London by Martin Wallace, which is a historical game about rebuilding London in the period from the Great Fire up through about the 1930s. It's just a great game. I probably play that one something like 5 times a year, which is more than I play any other single game because I'm playing different games every night.
All right. So at a couple, one or two more questions, and then we'll let you go. At Evil Hat, are you guys all big Dresden fans? Do you guys have favorite fan theories or anything like that?
They're definitely all big Dresden Files fans. Fred and Rob, I think, were big Dresden Files fans in the first place, which is part of how they originally came to be. The creators of the Dresden Files role-playing game, although that's all stuff that happened long before I knew them, so I don't really know that story very well. I know certainly the people who've come onto Evil Hat since then, like Chris Hanrahan and Sean Nittner, big Dresden Files fans. So everybody there was really committed to making sure we really did this game right and really kind of did right by the Dresden Files and creating it. That said, for the most part, I mean, I have little conversations with people about the Dresden Files here and there. I've probably conversed about it with Fred or corresponded with Fred about it more than anyone else, because he's the one who's doing things like the graphic design, a bunch of other things. And so he and I are the ones who would really have discussions about this might be the best way to represent X or Y in the Dresden Files. And Fred's actually, when we do the next expansion, he's probably going to try his hand at creating some of the content for it. I'm still going to do most of it, but he and I had been having a lot of conversations about how character decks are constructed, what the underlying math is about them. And he created a crossover character deck for the Kickstarter. He got permission to create a crossover character deck from a Sentinels of the Multiverse character who you'll be able to play in the Dresden Files game. And so that was kind of his apprenticeship on that, and I expect he'll be designing a couple of characters, probably one of the book decks when we get to the next expansions. We've talked about him doing Ghost Story maybe, because I don't have as many ideas for how to do Ghost Story. It's kind of a tricky one, and so he'd like to try his hand at it.
Awesome.
Okay, so before we let you go, is there any particular card in the Dresden Files card game that you're just really happy that you designed, or when you came up with the concept, you're like, yeah, I'm pretty clever, just something really cool that the fans can all be like, hey, this is Eric's favorite card?
Oh, gee. That is a difficult one. I'm very fond of Thomas's stunt. Thomas's stunt, he gets to just turn over the top card of his deck, and if it's a legal play, he gets to do it for free. And if it's not, it's not. And somehow I couldn't really quantify why in terms of what he does in the books, but that just seemed like a good fit with his character. He kicks ass because he's got vampire abilities, not because he's ever trained a day in his life to do anything.
Jerk.
He's just sort of he just gets it all. He gets the handsome. Okay, sure, I've got that. And so that something that cavalier just seemed in the spirit of his character. So I guess Thomas's stunt card. That's what I'll say.
What do you think is the most flavorful card? What is most flavorful of all your characters or card designs? What shoots the flavor?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a tough one. I'm going to say maybe Michael's deck. Michael, there's 4 kinds of cards in your deck. There's attack, investigate, what's called overcome, and take advantage cards. And Michael, instead of necessarily always attacking directly with an attack card, he has an overcome card and a take advantage card that do damage to the foes around them when they get taken, or add clues to the investigations around them when they get taken. And I thought of that as being a way of representing kind of all the restrictions that Michael labors under. That he's this, this kick-ass, powerful magical knight who occasionally trots out mysterious faith magic abilities above and beyond just his sword. But he's also, laboring under that need to give the demon a chance to repent instead of get its ass kicked, and that gets him into trouble all the time.
I actually think, which is you say that he's laboring under the restrictions of that. I think to Michael, to the character Michael, it's not a restriction to him. It's like, to him, it's not a restriction that every Denarian should have a chance to repent. It's just, it should be that way.
Well, I don't know. On the one hand, yes, he advocates that very strongly. And at the same time, when Harry says, well, I don't have to labor under that, and he just kind of slaps around the one denarian who turns human.
Yeah, the snake guy. What's his name?
Cassius.
Yeah. As much as Sonya and Michael disapprove, you can see they're also kind of gratified.
That's true.
By that. It's like forbidden fruit to them that Harry does that. So, I mean, I think everybody's torn between their conscious values and their kind of their gut feelings. And so I think, yes, that's very strongly Michael and Sonya's conscious values, but I think they're also human, and I think they do, in fact, get frustrated by those restrictions.
Yeah, to a lesser extent, Sonya, I think. If what is it with in one book where Harry's like something like, I just vote we kick in the door. Who's with me? And Sonya's like has his hand up, and Michael grabs it and pulls it down.
Yeah.
All right, Eric. Thank you so much for joining us. Sincerely, congratulations.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, congratulations again. Looks like you're almost at $401,000 now.
Yeah, we seem to be having a little surge. Maybe people are listening to the podcast and carrying right over.
I hope so. All right. Thank you. We hope to have you on again at some point in the future.
Thank you.
We're going to wrap it up because we're at about an hour. Once again, DresdenFilesPodcast.com. Check us out on Twitter, twitter.com/DresdenCast. Please check out BrokenJars.xyz, the Podcast Entertainment Network. There's going to be 2 new podcasts starting very soon. High Fantasy by our very own director Alex, who unfortunately couldn't join us today, and myself.
I'm on that one too.
And Jacob's on it. And I'll also be starting a gaming podcast, hopefully weekly, and that's going to be recording for the first time in about 15 minutes. So, DresdenFilesPodcast.com. Thank you again. Thank you again, Eric. Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Take care.
Bye.